Ladies and gentlemen, our session is about to start. Please take your seats.
What you been doing? What you gonna say? How you gonna feel at the end of the day? Do you ever wonder if it ever gets old? Does all that glitter leave you shining like gold? We don't let nobody tell us what to do. No misunderstanding. All you know is true. Everything is golden. Every day is new.
This is MyDenver. What's yours?
Denver Startup Week. Please welcome President and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership, Courtney Garrett.
Hello. Could everybody see the video? Did you see the video? I love the video. Okay, we're going to talk about the video in just a minute. Welcome. So thrilled to be here. So thrilled to have all of you here at Denver Startup Week, the 12th annual, which is so amazing, right? Huge, huge, huge round of applause. I really am passionate, and I really, really love that video. And starting next week, you're going to see even more about MyDenver and your Denver as we infuse a ton of energy into the MyDenver campaign. Because right now at the partnership, we're focused on celebrating this city and all of the ways that people who live and work and play are adopting it, right? How we are able to find ourselves in this city. We hear that over and over again. When I moved to Denver, when I started my business in Denver, I found myself, or I found my calling. The MyDenver campaign reminds us as to why we love this city, why its heart, right here in downtown, is where memories are made and moments are celebrated. And so many of the MyDenver stories we hear, and we're going to ask all of you to really think about your MyDenver story, so many of those are about opportunity. And that's something that you all as entrepreneurs, you all as startups know quite well, that this is a place of opportunity. MyDenver is a place where we welcome new ideas. We inspire each other to engage, and we've built an ecosystem that supports new businesses and their growth, which is exactly what we're here to talk about today, Denver's entrepreneurial ecosystem, one that has earned our city accolades and garnered national as well as international attention. And we're so lucky to be joined here today with three individuals who are working across sectors to strengthen the support that's available to our entrepreneurs. And at the Downtown Denver Partnership, we're committed to fostering this culture. We know that this community is one of Denver's greatest competitive advantages. And we know that the startup community is on the absolute leading edge of what the future holds. Now, what you'll see, everybody has a startup report at your seat. What you'll see in the 2023 edition of the Startup Report is evidence of the power of this sector. It's the evidence of the power of all of you sitting in this room. A few of the highlights that we love to talk about: Colorado is ranked as the #1 place for women to start up and the 6th most innovative state. Denver is ranked in the top 10 cities for innovation, tech talent, and earning potential. And since Denver Startup Week began, we've more than doubled the number of tech startups that were founded in our city and tripled the total number of tech startups operating here. Y'all, that's a lot of big news, right? So I think you need to give yourselves all a big round of applause, because that's huge. And this is hot off the press. We need to be telling this story. So the Downtown Denver Partnership is proud to produce Denver Startup Week, which is a time that brings us all together, the creators, the innovators, the operators, and our public sector partners. And we see all over the country that there's magic to having this ecosystem located in the dense urban area of a downtown. This is an environment that's ripe for those serendipitous connections when you go to a coffee shop or you're working in a co-working space, where you find those connections that help build business. And even though this environment has no doubt seen disruption, that's what the startup community is all about: disruption and innovation. So it is my pleasure to have our panelists here today, and we're going to talk about how a downtown area and how Denver specifically supports entrepreneurs, what the environment is like today, and the resources and opportunities that exist right here. So please help me welcome Chelsea Rosti. She is the Chief of Staff for the City of Denver Department of Economic Development. David Pritchard, CEO of Denver Angels, and Olivia Omega, Founder Track Chair of Denver Startup Week. So please help me welcome our panelists today. So great. So first, I'm going to ask each of you to just spend 2 or 3 minutes introducing yourself, talking about your kind of relevance to Denver Startup Week, and what your role in the overall ecosystem of startups is in our community.
Do you want to just go in order?
We'll just go down the line.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here this afternoon. Again, Chelsea Rosti with Denver Economic Development and Opportunity here in the city and county of Denver. So DITO, how does it fit in? Really, we like to say that we're kind of a connector piece. We provide resources. You really want me to get into all of the stuff? Okay.
Yeah, all the
Full
stuff.
minutes? Okay.
All the stuff, yeah.
Okay. So I guess I want to start here with a story that just really demonstrates what DITO does. And so we had a new American come to us. She has started a business making bags, and these are not just like any bags. These are the most amazing bags from Africa, but she's wanting to scale her business. And so we sat down around a table with our Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, Michael Beavis. Most of you probably know Michael in this room. He's the guy at DITO. And she was defeated. Her supply chain was broken. She didn't know where to turn. She didn't have capital. And what Michael did was very, in plain language, outline the resources that were available to her, start making connections for her to the people that she needed to talk to. And I just watched that hope build up in her, because we have those things available, and being, in this community for so long as a city, as an anchor institution, we were able to help her, and she just walked out so much lighter and full of hope. And I know that now her business is scaling as a result of that. So that's kind of what we do. We have resources for small businesses, but really we know where to send people. And we have a lot of different partnerships that we could get into, but I just wanted to share that story about what we do.
Such a great illustration.
And my name's Olivia Omega. I'm a Senior Director of Marketing and Communications at the Denver Scholarship Foundation, as well as the Founder Track Chair of Denver Startup Week. And those two worlds and those two networks really collide really, really well, in that the network we build here, the network that I have built through CU Boulder, my alma mater, has really propelled me in entrepreneurship as well as in business. We have a conundrum now at Denver Scholarship Foundation, in that a lot of young people want to become you all. They want to own their own business. And in their minds, they're thinking, if I own my own business, and if I work for myself, I do not need college. I do not need a credential after high school. And so it is my role and partially my responsibility to start to tell the stories of students that, for example, my son, who is at Emily Griffith High School, wants to become a YouTube influencer. And there is no need for him to go to college to become a YouTube influencer. But we're not all Steve Jobs, right? Or Bill Gates, that can drop out of school and become billionaires. And so right now he's actually taking night classes at Emily Griffith in video production, which is a certificate, a credential after high school that then fuel his path to becoming an entrepreneur. So between the two communities, I feel like I've been able to be an example of someone who has leveraged the communities to create connection, to create opportunity. And this is my 7th year helping with the Founder Track, Denver Startup Week. And I've seen over the last 7 years, and I did come at the very first year, so over 12 years, seen the evolution and just the growth that Denver has seen in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, but also the community of Denver Startup Week. The growth, the excitement, the energy, the diversity has been incredible. So I'm honored to be here and honored to pour back into this ecosystem at any and every opportunity that I can.
I'm David Pritchard, CEO for Denver Angels. There's a few different ways that we're a resource in the community. I'd say one funnel is we are a member group. We have 650 accredited investor members that are 90% Colorado-based. These are even the ones that are out of Colorado typically understand that Colorado is a great place to invest. And we see this opportunity to pull capital into Colorado and Colorado companies through that. A lot of them are business leaders in the community. The other funnel is we're an asset management group. As far as from a syndication standpoint, we've invested in 30-something companies over the last few years here in Colorado, over $30 million now on the syndication side. And we manage for our members, we actually manage those syndications actively rather than just facilitating angel investment. The other side of it is really a fund management organization. So we just launched the first fund, which is a seed fund, and that'll be the first of a series of funds. And so now with the seed fund, we're really able to support companies all the way from pre-seed through Series B commonly, and beyond is the intent. So we're actively looking at opportunities in Colorado at all stages. So.
It's incredible. Well, and I think the next question, so we were asking originally, what impact are you having on the community within each of your roles, which you've all talked about, and it's absolutely incredible. And I hope you can see the breadth and the different sectors as they come together, how that benefits the community. So I'm going to put a little twist on it and ask, what's next? Where do you see the need? And within each of your roles, where do you see that next kind of avenue of impact? And what are you doing to prepare for it? And then we'll break it up, I promise.
No, it's totally fine. Yeah, it's a great question. I think in our world, and it's not anything new, but we're really focusing in the equity space. And not equity capital, but equity as in equality, equity, DEI kind of work. And so we have started a fund, the Malone Fund, which is invested with the new Community Transformation Fund, and I can talk about that more later. But it's all about the work in ensuring that we have an economy that works for everybody. That's DIDO's mission, and it's coming from a place of when we had the Great Recession back in 2008, 2010, and we came out of that, there were winners and there were losers, and in a big way. And so we're wanting to make sure that as we come out of the recession that we experienced during the pandemic and moving forward in Denver, that that's not the case. That wealth can be built anywhere, that opportunity can be found anywhere. And so it's really, we center ourselves at the city and our job being in that equity space to make sure that we're building that opportunity. And so when we sat down with a sheet of paper at the beginning of the pandemic and it was like, what are we gonna do? We feel the weight of the economy in our backs. We were like, we just have to start with equity. That's where we start. We fill the spaces from, historically underrepresented folks and businesses and neighborhoods, and that's where we go to do the work, and that's where we infuse our resources, and that's what we've been doing, and we've seen the fruits of that, but the work is just beginning. So I think that's really what's next for DIDO, is continuing to shape our focus in that way. And I think the city is telling that story in some of the stats that you shared.
What I feel like is next for not only the Founder Track, Denver Startup Week, and the work that I do with regard to local high school and college students is this notion of belonging. How can we make it so that when people walk through these doors, regardless of whether they're here at HQ, if they're going to another session, that they feel like they belong there? And this isn't about, I have to see another Black woman. Black women, I see you, but I don't have to see another Black woman in a session to feel like I belong. So when we focus on belonging, and it's tricky because I can't tell you that you belong here, and I can't make you feel that. It's beyond me just saying like, hey, you're welcome. You really do have to feel it. But I know that if we're focusing on belonging in all of these different areas, including with underrepresented high school students, that need to see themselves in these groups. They need to see themselves as CEOs, as executive directors of nonprofits, as belonging on a college campus. When we focus on that, you have to have diversity. You have to have equitable practices and equitable systems. You have to have inclusion in order to get to belonging. And so I know that Denver Startup Week has done a really great job in focusing on the DEI. And so now it's like, all right, the evolution of that is the next level of making sure that everyone feels that they belong.
I love that I'm last. This is great. I just get a chance to actually think about it for a second, and this was an unanticipated question, which is great. And I'm actually going to answer it two ways. One, what's next for Colorado, and what's next for Denver Angels is a resource within that. I'd say Colorado, so much. You know, when you think about the way the ecosystem has expanded so much over the last decade, and you talked about a lot of the statistics, but one of the things that I don't think is fully settles in is when if you really look at the dollar amount of how much venture capital has been invested into Colorado companies on a year-by-year basis, we're only, we're seeing $5-6 billion a year right now. We're 11, 12 years ago from 300 million, right? So what we have not really seen yet is what the effect of the fact that in the last 5-ish years, we've had more capital invested in Colorado companies in the entire history of the state ever. We have not seen that ripple through yet. And so for Colorado, I think the answer is almost everything, right? There's in every area, we're going to see a ton of opportunity in expansion. And it's just going to be a matter of how fast can we keep up with, because the capital outside of Colorado is already investing in Colorado, and they're paying more and more and more attention to it. So we either fill a lot of those voids internally ourselves within Colorado and the organizations here, or other people will do it, right? And we will ship our returns and our talent out of the state, which thankfully we're not doing. We're actually importing a lot of it, but we have to aggressively make sure that happens. So then as far as Denver Angels within that, ultimately, we want to be a resource across the board for, almost all of the business activity, within Colorado in various ways. Right now, that looks very much like venture-backed, pre-seed to Series B companies through funds and individual syndications and angel investing. But that will continue to evolve, and I'll give a little, probably just a quick precursor to something that particularly is passionate to me, and I think is particularly important to creating more successful outcomes here in Colorado, and that's creating alternative tracks. Everyone when they take venture capital or even angel investors, typically when they're taking angel investments, they think they're going to be taking venture capital in the future, thinks they have a significantly venture scalable business, and they and the investors that invest in them think that as well. Well, guess what? Along the way, there's a whole lot of things that can happen. And there's a whole lot of surprises and changes and things you don't know and learn. And maybe you think you had a $2 billion market, and you find out as you get deep into it, you had a $100 million market. And that's a very different looking business. What venture, I think, doesn't do a great job of, and investors in general don't do a great job of, is being able to adapt to the business if all of a sudden the business starts to look different. Venture traditionally is just, oh, you're not a venture scalable business anymore? We're out. We'll focus on the next really exciting venture scalable business. And so a big passion point for me and focus, for me and for us as an organization is, how do we utilize the leverage of the resources and immense talent of all the people, and there are these 650 people that are a member of Denver Angels, to create alternative successful outcomes for a lot of these businesses if they get off the venture track, so to speak.
So how many of you, this is your first Denver Startup Week? Love that. Big round of applause, please. That's a really great percentage. I love that. I was afraid we were going to get crickets, and then I was going to lose my point. So Olivia, as one of the founding committee members, as your role within this space, give us a lay of the land. What does Denver Startup Week do for entrepreneurs? Simple question, right?
It's
say with a
interesting
wink.
because the name or the title Denver Startup Week, which has been around for 12 years, really has the middle name startup, right? And so we all have different definitions of what is a startup. What does that even mean? It's interesting to think of that a small business, quote unquote, is a business with over 250,000 sales or under 250,000 sales. Well, for some people that's small. For other people it's like, well, I just hit 10,000 this year. Like, I'm a small business. And so same thing with founder. What is a founder? What is a CEO versus someone who's interested in starting a company versus someone who has it a hobby? So one thing about Denver Startup Week is, and this goes back to like the foundations of business. You can't be everything to everyone. I will say, however, that Denver Startup Week truly does have something for everyone. And it's really hard to do that and do it well. But, you know, I brag on leadership, and everyone that's involved, that really DSW has something for everyone at any and every stage of your founder, entrepreneur, startup journey.
That's such a good point. I was just having this conversation with a building owner, one of the big commercial office building owners, and he said, I really want to come, but I don't really know how do I plug in? What does this mean for me? And I said, David, you have space, right? You need to lease it, right? You know, so it is. There's something for everyone. So it's really amazing what's been built here. So Chelsea, I'm going to move to you. You guys have always at DIDO and with the City and County of Denver have been long-standing supporters of entrepreneurship. A lot of resources. You've talked about a lot of them. What's unique about the public sector's role, and how? And I think the example you gave starts to pave that way. But then, how do these entrepreneurs engage? Where do you start?
That's a great question. And I think that what's unique about us is being able to approach it from that equity lens, like I said. So I'm going to start with that, is that we've really taken that on as the mission critical foundation for everything we're doing. So we'll just go there. But what we're doing is looking for places, and that's what's unique, I think, about the City and County of Denver, maybe not every government, but we're looking for places where inequities exist in this ecosystem, and that's where we're going to work. So, you know, we all know the statistics behind investment in women-led firms or diverse-owned firms in other ways. And so that's one place where we've put a lot of money. We've put over $15 million into a fund to make sure that the money is going to those type of founders here in Denver. To answer your question, though, where do you start? It's very simple. We partnered with Downtown Denver Partnership on the Commons on Champa. That's our co-working space. It's kind of, you know, in some transition, but that is a great place to go. And we're actually fixing to open I'm sitting next to you, and I start talking like,
Watch out. I got the y'all, you got the fixin'. Where are
talking
we
like
from?
I've been in Dallas. To open another space in Park Hill. Again, so yes, to the downtown piece, but we also know that there's other neighborhoods and spaces in Denver that need an entrepreneurship hub. And so we're going to open a space there and really meet people where they are. And we're going to have people like Michael Beavis. He's just a celebrity, so you just need to meet him. If you haven't met him, where do you start? You start with Michael Beavis, I'm telling you. But we have the resources, the staff, the people who can make those connections, whether it's back office support, legal, HR, marketing, whether it's funding, yes, we can make those connections to folks like David, to our own fund. Whether it's just, you need a network, right? You need a mentor. You need to know, hey, is there anyone else? One of Michael's favorite things to do is to introduce a CEO and another CEO that are competitors and have them go to coffee and talk with each other. That's the climate in Denver. It's not so much dog eat dog, but like, you know, dogs together at a coffee shop, learning how to best work in that industry and how to work together. And so I guess to wrap it all up, it's the network, it's the connections. So if you come to us, we'll be able to get you into the places that you need to go.
So we need to all memorize Michael Beavis's phone number, right?
Yes, and
303, no.
Yeah.
well, he was at my last session and ended up just coming up. Like, actually, let me just give the mic to you. But no, we have other staff on hand there at the Commons on Champa. Carrie Singer. We've got Rick Snyder, who does small business loans, and that's another thing I wanted to make sure I mention is that when sometimes you're not able to find a loan product that works for your business, DIDO's a great place to come. We actually have capital available through us that has more flexible terms, lower interest rate, things like that if other traditional loans aren't making sense.
So fantastic. And I will tell you, it is unique to Denver. So it's incredible that we're here. So David, speaking of unique to Denver, the Denver Angels have provided VC funding to a growing number of startups that are starting to become name brands: Pepper, Vartega, Nimble Science, and Goodbye Gear. Is there a competitive advantage to the businesses that you see coming out of Denver?
I'd say several. One thing was interesting to me and relevant to a couple of the names that you just mentioned as I was thinking about some of the investments that we've made and some of the commonalities between them. And then I heard you earlier mention the statistic about being the #1 place for women to have a startup. And we're seeing that begin to really trickle into the more mature businesses, not just on the startup side, as that has evolved. And what's really interesting is you look at a portfolio of 30-something investments now, and the 4 largest companies that we've invested in terms of revenue are all women-led. Yeah. I mean, and we're talking tens of millions, right? One of them's very rapidly next year, unless something slows down fast, they're going to be over 100 million. They'll probably do 70 million this year. And so that's fascinating to me in a lot of ways, right? And what's interesting is us as an organization, we don't have a mandate around having to make a certain kind of investment, based off of, from an inclusion standpoint. We want to be inclusive. We want to be, fair in how we consider things, but that's not a mandate of ours, right? And so the fact that without any kind of mandate at all in that area, we've seen, I think a third of the portfolio are women-led, and the 4 largest businesses now, from just pure revenue growth standpoint, have been women-led. So that, I would say, the rising up of a lot of these great women business leaders that are building venture scalable businesses is definitely a competitive advantage we have here, I think, and we're going to see that play out a ton. The other thing I'd say is just the fact that with the way we draw, we draw from the east and west in a really fascinating way, and we continue to draw a ton of talent and even a lot of ideas and businesses and things that were birthed on the coast that they can go anywhere, and they come here to start it and to launch it. And so our continuing expanding talent pool, I think, is a huge competitive advantage for sure.
So I think that's so true. And again, I mean, you see it in the numbers, right? Startup report, really look at it, memorize it, but we see it in the numbers. And when we look at what is the next generation of business coming in, as we've had such a significant market disruption, I just think it's one of those things that we need to keep front of mind in our long-term strategies. So such a good point. Okay, I'm going to go back to a question for all of you. And Olivia, I'm going to start in the middle this time. And I'm going to layer on to what you were prepped with. So sorry. But it's a softball. In terms of advice, I would love to hear from each of you. What is one piece of advice that's really resonated, that's been given to you as you've risen in leadership in this space? And then what piece of advice do you have, if different, for everyone who's here today?
That's a great question. The piece of advice that has been given to me has been, it's never too late to shift and pivot. Never too late. And there's all the examples of, like Martha Stewart and all of there's a lot of entrepreneurs that didn't make it big. Harrison Ford didn't start in a movie until he was like 35, almost 40 years old. So thinking, especially as I get older in age, I think about this notion that it's never too late to be like, yep, I went down that path. It was a great path for a season and for a while, and now it's time to do something else. And it could be a tiny pivot or shift. We saw a lot of pivoting in 2020. Or it can be like, I'm actually thank you to this path and this plan and this business in life, and I'm totally gonna go over here, and I don't have to apologize, I don't have to explain myself, I don't have to, but, nope, I'm over here now, and it's totally fine. And then the advice that I would give, and this is advice I give every entrepreneur that I come in contact with, that I work with, shout out to anyone who has gone through Co-Starters, which is an incredible program at the Co-Starters? Where'd that come from? Kaylin, oh, you too? Oh, and then someone just left, okay. The 9-week program through the Commons on Champa, we literally go through step by step, and I see these, they're not babies in humans, but babies in business, right? And I feel like it's like teaching someone in preschool, like, all right, you gotta wash your hands, and then you gotta do this, and then all of a sudden they come back from college and they have kids, and you're like, oh my gosh, look at this human. Again, I'm talking about the businesses. Levin Deli is an exciting example of the very first person who went through Co-Starters and is now doing incredible things. But the advice is you have to narrow your market. You have to. And a lot of times we don't want to leave money on the table. And so whether it's a product or a service, but this product is for everybody, and all of these people can do it, and I don't want to narrow, because if I narrow, we're talking beyond demographics, we're talking psychographics. How do they think? What trauma have they gone through? All of these things. If I narrow, then what about all these other people that I know can benefit my product, and I can benefit from their money? When you scream to the world about your product or service, no one can hear you because you're yelling and they're scrolling and doing what they do. But if you get down on street level and you say, you come here, let's have a conversation, and I can talk to you one-on-one, now I'm gonna bring in customers in a way that I've never been able to do before. It's scary, but I'm telling you, every time I give the advice and then someone comes back to me, I narrowed down my niche, you were right, things, took off, and it's like, yep, that's my advice.
Chelsea.
Thank gosh I didn't have to go first, because I sat here and tried to think good on you. That was a great answer for just coming right out of the box. So I thought about this. I'd say the second thing that you said, the advice you would give, was along the vein, but I'm going to try to diversify it a little bit here just for value. But the advice that I've been given is I think that a lot of success relies on our ability to look at an opportunity and believe in ourselves to seize the opportunity. And so I can't, and this is just gonna go more down to career rather than being a founder, but I can't tell you the number of times that I've talked to someone and I'm, hey, are you gonna put in for that position? Are you gonna go for that promotion? Are you gonna go for that investment? Well, I don't know. And you can see the fear. And I guess I would just say that where I've been able to go in my career has just been like, all right, I'm going to say yes to this opportunity, as long as it aligns with those beliefs and values that you've decided systematically for yourself. So just believing in yourself, and success comes from the yeses to the opportunities that come your way, I think, a lot of times. Advice that I would give, and I'm a culture person, so really what my job is as the chief of staff, what I've decided my job is, maybe they don't think this, is to really work on culture inside of the organization. And it's really, really important to me. And so it's actually gonna go right along with what you were just saying. But your culture is always under attack. And the reason for that inside of your business is the outside voices. So kind of along, the lines of what you might say, oh, why is, everybody's investing in this, and if this business isn't doing what we think it should, we're just gonna go on to the next thing. But in your business, you need to think about what your culture is, and don't let that be penetrated by the outside voices. If you know that your culture is people over profit, right? Don't let someone else coming in and saying, oh, if you go after all these other customers, that's really gonna be what makes you successful. It's really, 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 really making that moat solid around your business and not letting it get penetrated by those outside voices. You can take time every now and then to revisit those values and make sure that they still align with what you want to do. But the worst thing that a leader can do is start to get distracted by that outside noise and lose their mission of what they want their culture and mission, values to be inside, because when the people are happy, the customers are happy. And so I would just say, turning inside, getting clear on what that is, and then protecting that with everything you have.
Awesome. And David?
You know, I'll come at this from a little more of a capital angle, but not all businesses and startups have to raise capital. And I'll first say that I encourage everyone to think through really well whether or not that is a road that they want to go down, and whether that's how they want to build their business, and what they want to be obligated to along the way, right? Because there are obligations that come with that. But if you do go down the road of wanting to raise capital, I really encourage you to understand the capital landscape, spend some time understanding the capital landscape, similar to how you understand your business and your market and the things that you do, and what that roadmap looks like, and who not all capital is your capital. And I think that's like one of the most common challenges. A lot of times early on, people are, they've got a great business or they have a really exciting idea, and they just think that just because someone has money that they're their investor, or because they invest, they're their investor, and that's not necessarily the case. And I think the more you can understand who your capital is, and even well beyond that, just like you set your own KPIs and milestones for your business along the way, understand your capital journey along the way. What do you have to get to the next stage to engage capital again, and who is that? And if you can, and there's only so clearly, right, but if you can have that generally mapped out in your mind, it helps make those capital decisions easier along the way for who you're talking to and where you're taking capital from. Because a very common challenge I see a lot of early stage startups run into is early on they just kind of take whatever they can get, whoever will give them money, and get them sort of survive or help them do the next thing they need to do. But it can often become a trap, because at some point they've taken enough of the wrong type of capital, and then they need to get on another track or try and engage, or they don't look a lot like a type of company that private equity or VC or whoever would invest in. And so just really encouraging founders just really think about that aspect of the business as a real planning aspect, and really understand who their future capital sources are.
Fantastic. Well, we do have some time here for questions, so let's open it up. We want to hear from you.
Hello. My question is for David. When you spoke about the 4 companies within your portfolio that were all female founded, I'm curious to know what it was about them and their companies that led to such high rates of success. Was it leadership or the way that they went about their process? I'm curious what the nuances of that were.
Yeah, if I could perfectly identify it and bottle it up, I'd go share it with everyone in the portfolio. But there's certainly some commonalities, and you touched on one of them as far as really focusing on your customer really well. I would say if there's one commonality amongst all of those, as far as how they've gotten significant market share into 10 million plus of revenue very quickly, has been all 4 of those companies have really honed in on a very specific customer. And even though they could serve a lot of other customers, they have had significant laser vision around who their customer is. And I'll give you one example of one of them, because it's just easy to understand, and I'll share some general items they wouldn't mind me sharing. I won't give the specifics on revenue, but Pepper has been just a wildly successful business here in the community, and done very, very well. And they've really honed in on, they only did bras for A and B cup women. That's it. They basically said 30% of women are fit this category, and no one really focuses on just them. And we know that story, and they killed it, and they scaled to tens of millions, and they grew very quickly and very capital efficient. Now they're beginning to open up to a whole lot of other categories, but where I think a lot of businesses would have been very tempted when they were single-digit millions to start doing that, they didn't even think about it until they were tens of millions, you know, as far as addressing other product categories, and just were super laser focused on that area.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is David. I survived the great inflation of the 1970s, the oil bust of the 1980s, the telecom bust of the 1990s, and before the great meltdown in 2008, I started a new venture. The only company to develop a manufactured end product out of recycled scrap tires. And we were here to solve a terrible problem that faces the entire world, not just the United States, and certainly not just Colorado. So I wanted to make a couple comments and then ask a question. Research that I did during the oil bust was intended to help economic developers, because I was part of the economy that I wanted to help develop. This was in another part of Colorado. And the research that I found at that time, this was a long time ago, demonstrated, because of basic big data analytics done by a professor of all things biochemistry at MIT, his input-output analysis showed that the way to economic development and job generation is to support, especially with good financing, new technology brought to growing markets. You do that really well. It's extraordinary. It's really, I mean, it's fascinating to see the longevity of your organizations and your success. With that in mind, my question is, can you grow into the Colorado Economic Development and Opportunity Organization? Let's not be so selfish and just help downtown Denver. What about the burbs? What about the entire metropolitan area? I think there's a lot of opportunity there for you. And then my follow-on question is, in that space between your mission statements and your operations, I mean, if you're going to go to another job, you go to the state of Mississippi or Biloxi, Mississippi, and the Chamber of Commerce wants you to develop an economy there, what are you going to say you've done and you will do that is actually causal, that generates jobs, generates revenue, builds the tax base, improves quality of life, all of that? Back in the day, economic development was helping a new company move here from out of state, get them some cheap land, and then give them tax breaks. You're way beyond that. I mean, you all are like shooting stars. You're awesome and wonderful. Please keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for listening to me.
So I'm going to challenge our panelists to answer that in about 1 minute that we have left. Big questions, great questions. Any comments?
Well, so the surrounding areas, I'll address that. So I think that we are in partnership with, I know that we're in partnership with all the surrounding areas, especially with the Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce. That's a regional partner organization. We sit around the same tables with all of the cities and counties here in the area. So that's one thing. We're definitely working on that. Also, what Denver does helps the entire state. This is sort of, it's called the capital, for the reason that we are trying, what we do, we hope will be replicated outside of here. And I think to answer your question, what are we doing to create jobs? It is this. We really believe in startups and mid-scale companies and even our large companies, and how can we partner with them and ensure that those jobs are being created and that we're also building talent in the places. Part of economic development in Denver is workforce development. We have More than half our agency does that, and we are building that talent to scale those companies. We've got a wonderful global division who I know is in the house over here, going out into the world and trying to help companies expand here. So that was the whole minute, sorry.
All good. You're perfect. Right on. Spot on. Well, please help me thank our panelists. So please make sure that you utilize all of what you've heard today. Make sure that you remember Michael Beavis's name. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, please.
Yeah. But you've heard a tremendous number of resources in our community, so please, please, please make sure to utilize them. Scan the QR code on the screen. That will give you the full download of the startup report. And visit thisismydenver.com, and you'll see some great stories, and we hope that you'll contribute one as well. So thank you. Have a great rest of Denver Startup Week.